And we are back. It's been a while. The summer season of the Russian Drift Series was kicked off by Stage 1 of RDS Open, former Europe in Rostov-on-Don, in not-so-southern weather. And today we'll be covering Stage 1 of the Premier Series GP that took place at the Moscow Raceway, where the weather was totally unruly, to the point where the first summer stage became a winter event. This would be the first time we are seeing 1,000-horsepower beasts in a snowstorm. Also, there was plenty of controversy surrounding the judging, which we'll do our best to concisely explain in this video for those who really want to know what happened. We'll even ask for some feedback from participants of the most controversial battles. And with that, let's get started. This new season of RDS GP brought with it plenty of changes. First of all, finally there's a multitude of contenders in the Premier Series. No more freebies in qualifying, no more byruns in the top 32. From now on, drivers will have to put in some serious effort if they want to be a part of the competition. Also, a bunch of changes have been made to the regulations and judging rules. We might even make a separate video on the topic later this season, but for now it'll be just the basics pertinent to this event. But let's go ahead and cover the event itself then. 41 drivers entered the race, however one of them, namely Boris Abramov, had to drop out due to engine failure in his car, leaving just 40. And almost none of them are new to the world of RDS. Most of the newcomers have been tried and tested in Europe to one degree or another. Some of them literally did just one event, while others competed for many years and even finished seasons in the top 3. We'll introduce you to all of them in due time. No fundamental changes to the assignment, just your usual sort of straight MRW layout. Though in some spots the track was widened, in others narrowed. There was some experimenting with the dimensions and number of the clips, so a few things have been changed after all. The assignment itself is on your screens, and with that, let's cover qualifying. The first new development, drivers no longer qualify in order of their place in the championship. Now it's all down to chance, to the throw of a dice. Meaning that qualifying groups will be mixed, the first one consisting of GP rookie but super experienced driver and coach Ilya Polishuk, Andrei Ostapov, another ex-European Artyom Leitis, Maxim Grossman, Georgy Chivchyan, another ex-European and Polishuk's teammate Alexander Abramov, Arkady Tsaragratsev, Alexei Vakhtin, and 2 more former contenders in the Junior Series, Danila Vorobyov and Ivan Palman. The grid this year is crowded, so this will be a concise overview. Some drivers in this group did well. First place goes to Georgy Chivchyan, who scored 96.5 for his second run, though his first run was less impressive at 84.5. Danila Vorobyov is another one who did well, 94 and then 91 points. Maxim Grossman posted a 91.5 for his second attempt. Artyom Leitis scored a 93.5, also for his second run. The only one who disappointed here was Tsaragratsev. 4 wheels out of bounds and 0 points. And then a very lackluster 79.5 point second attempt. The worst positive score was for Ilya Polishuk, 65 for his second run, though his first went better at 85. Group 2. GP rookie Dmitry Sherbina, Leonid Schneider, Yevgeny Losiev, Anton Dmitrienko, Anatoly Kizin, who's another newbie but still well-known in these circles, flamboyant ex-European pilot Alexei Kozlov, Sergei Sak, Artyom Shabanov, Anton Kliamko, and Artur Zelyony. The negatives. Sherbina became the only driver who didn't earn points in qualifying. There was obviously something wrong with his car. Zelyony also scored a 0, though his first run did earn him 83 points. The 2 worst positive scores in this group were posted by Anton Dmitrienko, 61.5 and 55. Well done to Anton Kliamko though. His first attempt was average at 83, but for his second run he scored a whopping 94. And of course the main battle for first place in this group, and at least temporarily in qualifying, was waged between Yevgeny Losiev and Artyom Shabanov, where Shabanov came out on top. 91.5 and 97.5 for Yevgeny, 91 and 98.5 for Artyom. We have a new leader in qualifying. Group 3, where we have Denis Miguel, Dmitry Yermokin, GP rookie but not new to the sport Pyotr Baradin, Ilya Popov, Danil Skorobogatov, Timofey Dobrovolsky, Sergei Kuznetsov, Grigory Gusiev, and another GP rookie who has been racing for quite some time, Ruslan Arefiev. And this group did well overall. No zeros, worst positive score was for Arefiev, who posted a 42. Also, he made a 73-point attempt, which still wasn't quite enough. Timofey Dobrovolsky did very well, scoring 97.5 points for his first attempt, though his 86.5-point second run prevented him from being on par with Losiev. Sergei Kuznetsov had an awesome first attempt at 95.5. Denis Miguel, Dmitry Yermokin, Danil Skorobogatov, and Grigory Gusiev also all scored 90+. And now the last group. Roman Tividar, Damir Idiatulin, Nikita Shikov, Grigory Burlutsky, Denis Sorokaput, Vladislav Popov, Vladislav Yerofeyev, Kirill Matskevich, who switched series but stayed with his old team, Ilya Fyodorov, Anton Kozlov, and Yevgeny Spirin. Shikov posted the only zero, though thankfully he got himself together for his second run, and scored 84 points. The worst positive score was Yerofeyev's 69, though his first attempt did earn him 81. Drivers who scored 90+: Tividar at 94, Matskevich 91, Kozlov twice at 97 and 94. And of course, Damir Idiatulin, who did well during his first run, earning 91.5 points, while for his second he almost went full classic Damir, scoring 99.5 points and earning first place in qualifying. A bit of a shame because on the broadcast the run looked perfect, but when examining it more closely, turns out that around Touch and Go 1 a lot of drivers were doing a bunch of correction, which wasn't obvious when watching the live. Damir was one of those drivers, and that's why Judge Mikhail Davidans removed half an angle point. And yes, you might have just noticed that the lineup of judges is slightly different this year. The new angle judge's duty this year will also be judging the fluidity component of driving style, which basically means transition crispness and precision. The reason being it's just more convenient for him to do. Meanwhile, the actual style judge will be monitoring solely commitment and the car's motion dynamics. Congrats to Damir for once again winning qualifying, and with that it's time to cover the tandem drifting. I think it's totally fair. I did correct a tiny bit. You can barely notice it on the footage, but certainly the judges saw it from their tower. And I also felt it, so it's fine. So far you might be thinking that qualifying went quickly and smoothly. Not the case at all. 80 runs is a lot. Also, you had the hectic weather where first the sun is out and the next second it's windy and snowing. But the tandem drifting is where things totally went out of control. On the left side of the table, rarely did a battle not end with a crash and a subsequent competition timeout. Though at first, things were relatively calm. Damir Idiatulin did way better leading than Ilya Popov. If they'd have been scored for qualifying, it would have been 96.5 and 86.5 respectively. And though the former was not super close in the chase, he was fairly consistent, and after a bit of back and forth, the judges sent him to the next stage. And now is when things get a bit crazy. The heat between Kirill Matskevich and Danila Skorobogatov was going well until the final bend, when Danila went to catch up and slammed into Kirill. Matskevich made it to the end, while Skorobogatov didn't really. Time Up gets a bonus timeout as Skorobogatov was at fault, and time for another round. Danila was not perfect in the lead, Kirill was sticking much closer, to the point where they almost repeated the situation from the previous run, but he reeled himself in and won the battle. Anatoly Kizin went straight to business and struck Roman Tividar right as they were initiating. Another timeout, Kizin was obviously at fault. All Tividar needed to do was to chase in save mode, which he did, landing a spot in the top 16. But remember this understeer, it'll come up later on. Vladislav Popov went with a different tactic going up against Danila Vorobyov, hitting him lightly but frequently. Vorobyov took it like a champ and made it to the line without doing a spin to win. However, during the course of another timeout, it turned out that even though Danila made it, his car did not. Broken steering rack, Lukoil's driver could not continue, and by the race director's order, Vorobyev was given the victory for this round. During the heat between Timofey Dobrovolsky and Nikita Shikov, nobody crashed, but it wasn't what you'd call good. Both drivers made their fair share of blunders in both positions, though it was decided that the winner of this contest in who made more mistakes was Shikov, who forfeited the win to Dobrovolsky. The battle between two Denises, Miguel and Sorokapud, also saw the two drivers colliding. In the aforementioned final bend, Miguel did not get on throttle in time, while Sorokapud seemingly made no effort to avoid crashing into the leader while trying to catch up with him. Goch and Kozlov sometimes had a similar dynamic. The judges spent a lot of time trying to figure out whose mistake was more severe, and ruled that Miguel was at fault for the crash, as it was him who was late to get on throttle, another 8 meters after the dotted line and still no smoke from his tires. Also, his speed in that spot was almost 10 kilometers an hour lower compared to qualifying. The second portion of the heat was also disappointing. Sorokapud was doing some odd moves in the lead, while Miguel was pretty far behind. Round 1 was the decider, and the Denis whose last name is Sorokapud is still in the running. Anton Kozlov and Evgeny Spirin. Kozlov doing a great job in the lead, Spirin following at a moderate distance, the final bend, and here we go again. Anton actually wasn't perfect in this spot while leading, though he didn't make any critical mistakes, while Evgeny got the placement of his car on the track wrong, which is what led to contact. There was a lot of smoke inside my cabin, the sun lit it up, and I didn't see the braking zone until it was too late. I was late to get on the brakes. If he'd have not hit me, I would have missed the inner touch and go, and my performance as the leader wouldn't have been good. During the second portion of their duel, Spirin was not spectacular in the lead, with Kozlov effectively checking him at close proximity, which earned him a spot in the top 16. Well, at least there were no issues with Artyom Leitis and Ivan Pelman's battle, as in they didn't collide at least. Otherwise, Ivan was carrying too much pace in the lead, also 4 of his wheels left the track during round 2, that is a 0. Round 1 saw no such things happen, both drivers did well, though they weren't necessarily perfect. And as you've probably guessed, Artyom Leitis progresses to the next competition stage. And now we're at the right side of the tournament table. Here things were going somewhat smoother, at least no more cars were crashing. Well, almost. As expected, Artyom Shabanov beat Artur Zelyony, but you gotta hand it to Artur. He was giving it his all in the chase, even though he was slightly erratic. Also, you can't really say he did much worse than Artyom as the leader. He must have been pumped to have won in qualifying during the open event, but experience rules. Shabanov wins. Maxim Grossman almost gave the win to Leonid Schneider, missing a bunch of the clips while in the lead, his line score amounting to 13 out of 30 points. Schneider, in the meantime, was successfully working around the leader's strange movements, and afterwards made a clean run while in the lead. Maxim was sticking pretty close to him in the chase, but at that point it was too late. Schneider is in the top 16, where he meets with Shabanov. Two Sergeys, Kuznetsov and Sak, were apparently trying to copy the two Denises who went before them. Round 1, Kuznetsov was far from perfect as the leader, so was Sak in the chase. Then during round 2 we saw contact and Kuznetsov going into opposite drift. Granted, Sak did transition while stabilizing himself with the handbrake, but this wasn't prohibited in the assignment. He didn't slow his opponent down, his pace was on point, even compared to qualifying. Bang on almost to the kilometer per hour. Also, he did the same thing during qualifying as well. Meanwhile, Kuznetsov transitioned in the wrong spot, his angle wasn't as wide. Also, the flanker's dynamics were a factor. Accounting for all mistakes made, the win was given to Sergei Sak. The heat between Anton Kliemko and Alexander Abramov was also a bit awkward. First of all, Kliemko was one of the few who decided he'd start off in the chase position. That's another new development. Whoever scored higher in qualifying can choose which position to start the heat from. Most drivers chose to start by leading, but there were exceptions, this being one of them. Abramov wasn't perfect in the lead, but he did alright. Meanwhile, Kliemko might have regretted his decision, because on top of not being able to put up a good fight, he also corrected quite significantly at a certain point, even though he was able to maintain an angle of about 11 degrees. For the second portion of the heat, Anton did a better job leading compared to Alexander, but then Sasha retaliated with some serious pressure in the chase position. You'd think that Abramov would come out on top or this would go to an OMT, but hello! You wouldn't have believed it until the judges would have pointed to this part of the broadcast and demonstrated this graph. He straightened out in the same spot as Anton, but this time the angle was at 0 as opposed to 10 degrees. That is a 0.2 run for Alex. As such, Anton Kliemko progresses to the top 16. And this is where things got interesting. Vladislav Yerofeyev, the only Lekar Oderzhimy Motorsport driver left standing, gave Yevgeny Losiev a run for his money. His performance in the lead being almost on par, essentially 22 line points against 24 for Losiev, and he did a fantastic job in the chase. Meanwhile, it felt as if Yevgeny was playing it safe while chasing. At a quick glance, one might think that Losiev came out on top here, but it'll go to an OMT. Props to Vlad, he earned it. The heat between Grigory Gusiev and Dmitry Yermokin was effectively over as soon as they initiated during round 1, when a belt snapped in Grika's car, forcing him to stop. Yermokin in the meantime made it to the line. Grigory was not perfect in the lead, meanwhile Dmitry was playing it super safe, but not to the point where it was an inactive chase, and ultimately he earned the win. Two titans clash. Of course, some GP fans might not be familiar with Ilya Polishuk, unlike Georgy Chivchyan, but you might want to Google him. Polishuk is a very formidable opponent even for the likes of Gocham, as long as Ilya's cars don't break. And that's exactly how their battle played out. Both drivers made some mistakes in the lead. Polishuk missed a good 3 clipping points while allowing a few wheels to go astray, while Chivchyan missed touch and go 5, wasn't effective with his throttle inputs, with a bit of lag, and also clumsily correcting. For anyone who thinks they saw him straighten out, take a look at this graph. You'll notice his angle isn't 0, which wasn't the case for Abramov. That's a solid 10 degrees, just like Kliemko posted, and in the same exact spot once again. But most importantly, both drivers were fantastic in the chase, especially Chivchyan. Thanks for giving the fans something to enjoy. After a bit of thought, the judges ruled for an OMT, which makes perfect sense. Even though Mikhail favored Ilya, given that Davidian's, him being the angle judge, was hyper-focused on Goch's gross correction. The rest of the judges decided that the mistakes made by Polishuk and Chivchyan were identical in their severity. The final primary top 32 battle. Andrei Ostapov and Grigory Burlutsky both made some mistakes in the lead, 22 versus 20 line points respectively. Meanwhile, in the chase, Ostapov was closer, which obviously earned him the win. It was almost dusk when the OMTs began. Both duels had unambiguous outcomes this time. Yevgeny Losiev was perfect in the lead, Vladislav Yerofeyev put in a valiant chase effort, right up until the front wheels of his Z seemingly found too much grip, with the car bucking and leaving Vlad out of the running. Yevgeny meanwhile completed his run in impeccable fashion. During the second portion of the heat, Yerofeyev made a bunch of mistakes, while Losiev was seemingly in a flow state, sticking really close despite the leader's mistakes, which earned him his spot in the top 16. It was also pretty clear who the last contender to transition to the next competition stage would be. Ilya Polishuk misread Georgy Chivchyan's acceleration, falling slightly behind, driving through the first and second sector further behind than he should have been, only catching up to his opponent on the second half of the track. Meanwhile, not much to criticize Gocha for in the lead. For the second round, both pilots brought their A-game. Ilya was brilliant in the lead, while Gocha avoided making the same mistake as his opponent did. He didn't let him get away at the start, and stuck close the entire way, which earned him the last available top 16 spot. After that sort of top 32 stage, it would have been nice for the subsequent stage to not be as hectic, however, not as many collisions, but much more confusion for the panel of judges. For example, the first pair, Damir Idiatulin and Kirill Metskevich. During the first round, Damir did a good job in the lead. Aside from missing touch and go 4, Kirill wasn't quite in step, though he was really close, to the point where he almost hit his opponent in the ill-fated final turn. During the second portion of their battle, Kirill earned 2 fewer line points due to hitting the no-go in the first turn, but overall he did quite well. Idiotulin seemed to be doing an even better job chasing than Mickiewicz, until in the final curve the blue and white Supra rammed the black and gold car. The judges took a lot of time to deliberate. An OMT would have been awesome, however, here's the breakdown. The deciding factor was Damir's performance as the chaser, and the decision was not in his favor. Yes, he was slightly closer, but not just by means of using the no-go zone, but also through exiting the actual track twice. After initiating, he hit the small no-go with one wheel, and later in the bigger one, 2 of his wheels went off, which is a punishable offense. Also, his positioning in the final bend was incorrect. That and too much speed led to the collision. Kirill, in the meantime, was maintaining the right pace. He did nothing wrong in that regard. So, with all things considered, plus that tap at the finish, Mickiewicz was given the win. Damir was asked to give a comment after the race was over, and as usual, he was very measured and careful with his words, saying something like, "I didn't see the graphs, I don't know for sure, etc." But overall, he understood why the judges made the decision that they did. Unlike him, they definitely saw the graphs, and so he had no contention with them or his opponent. Moving along, Roman Tividor and Danila Vorobyev. Both drivers did a fantastic job, though Roman was slightly more precise in the lead. Let's call it 28 line points against 24. Also, he was slightly closer in the chase, which earned him a spot in the top 8. Timothy Dobrovolsky and Denis Sorokopod. Once again, not very clear-cut. Dobrovolsky did so-so in the lead, earning just 15 out of 30 line points, while Sorokopod was pretty inconsistent in the chase, catching up and falling behind. They changed places. Denis was only slightly better in the lead, earning 20 points, while Timothy fell behind slightly at first to then catch up, and in that treacherous final bend, Sorokopod's BMW slips and loses a lot of momentum. Meanwhile, the Silvia piloted by Timofey was barely able to brake and prevent this battle from ending in another crash. Same exact situation as with Miguel's battle with Sorokopod in the top 32 stage, though this time Timofey saved the day. And after factoring in all of the mistakes, the latter's performance was deemed superior. Artyom Leitis versus Anton Kozlov, and again more issues. Anton, having earned more points for qualifying, decided to start in the chase position, and he might have regretted that decision, as apparently in his efforts to stick as close as he could, he gave his opponent a few serious hits, from touch and go 4 and onwards. Artyom was seemingly driving without a care in the world, and he didn't even spin out. However, during yet another timeout, the judges announced that it was Sortovala's driver who was at fault for all of those taps. Leitis twice failed to follow the assignment. According to the assignment, and this was certainly mentioned during the briefing, abruptly maneuvering in the slowdown zones is not allowed. Angle should increase gradually and starting at an earlier point. You're better off missing touch and go 4, but staying on throttle. Artyom, in the meantime, was hanging on for too long while losing a lot of speed attempting to hit that square, which he ultimately missed, by the way. Who didn't miss was Anton. Him hitting Artyom with how close he was and how he probably wasn't expecting such actions on his part. Right after that, Leitis botched his transition, he began too early, got the angle wrong, and took an inner dive, creating serious issues for Artyom in doing so. As it turns out, Artyom not being able to maintain pace was down to something that the commentators were joking around about during the live broadcast. Just like Losiev some time ago, he simply confused his gear stick with his handbrake, and instead of pulling the handbrake, he upshifted. The second round was quite a bit smoother. Anton earned his 30 points in the lead. Artyom was close at first, but then he got lost in the smoke, fell behind, then caught up again. Obviously, this battle was won by Kozlov. So for that run, I used the new clause in the rules that allows you to choose which lane to start in. And as we were warming up, I was getting ready to lead. But then a massive snowstorm began, and I thought that might change the condition of the lane. When the surface is very slippery, you are better off being in the chase, because in the chase you're repeating after the leader, which gives you a bit of extra security, while for the leader essentially everything is on the line. And so right before we started, I decided that I should be chasing to avoid taking those risks. But there was nothing wrong with the lane. Artyom just misshifted. He selected the wrong gear, which resulted in a tap. I did a more or less decent job with the chasing, but right after the deceleration zone, Artyom didn't open up that well and we had a collision. Both cars were damaged, Artyom's wheel caught fire, and that fire had to be put out. So we experienced the full gamut of emotions today, starting from the top 32 and all the way to the final race. So yeah, that run was pretty nerve-wracking, and I'm glad that in our team this would be the second time in a row we meet each other, but we're very friendly and open with each other, and even in these sorts of situations we support each other. The previous battle was between teammates from Carvel, but this time we have infighting inside of Time Up. Artyom Shabanov and Leonid Schneider. Shabanov in the lead earned more line points than Schneider, 26 versus 24, and he was closer in the chase. You'd think he's the winner here, but Artyom begs to differ. This is the third time we're running into each other. It happened at 2 events last year, and on both occasions we were battling on the Moscow Raceway. And yet again today. We're usually cool about it. Today neither of our cars broke, those were some good runs, and I had the slight upper hand. Leonid... Not to knock on Leonid, I made my fair share of mistakes in both positions. I was playing it safe. It's difficult going up against a teammate. You're trying to preserve your car. You can't go full clip because what if... You're preserving your car for if you stay in the running, and in case I lose, I don't want to smash Leonid's car. So this wasn't the worst, but it was difficult, yeah. There you go, who would have known? The next heat was pretty much over at the start. Anton Kliemko was dealing with some issues with his car, which were so severe that he couldn't even finish the first round, and he didn't make it to round 2. He is forced to retire, with Sergei Suk progressing to the next stage via byrun. For the next duel, amazingly, we saw no collisions or apparent technical issues. Dmitry Yermokin fell behind Yevgeny Losyev while initiating, maintaining the same distance all the way to the finish. Both drivers as leaders earned 27 line points, but Losyev was so much closer in the chase, which earned him a spot in the top 8. The final duel of this chapter didn't go quite as well as you might have hoped. It was going alright until, in the touch-and-go 3 bend, Gocha allowed 3 wheels to go out of bounds. Estapov checked him, but literally 1 second later when both cars were back on track, in the slowdown zone the red BMW collided with the yellow Z. Round is over. What's there to even say? Yes, Gocha did allow 3 wheels to step out, and he would have lost 10 points for it in the end. But here's an important detail. Looking at the drift dynamics data logs, the leader was slowing down gradually just like during qualifying. Perhaps if Estapov had hit Shevchian in this spot, the outcome would have been completely different, but Andrei, who noticed that Georgi was going the wrong way, decided to shed some speed, and then in the slowdown zone when both cars were back on track and stabilized, he wasn't able to slow down all the way. His car pounced forward, you can see it on the slow-motion replay, and struck his opponent. So there were mishaps on both sides, unfortunate circumstances, but the rules are the rules. Estapov hit the leader in the slowdown zone, the leader's pace was decreasing gradually, they were on track and stabilized, and so fault for the incident was placed onto Andrei. There were discussions with him about the incident after the event, and the conclusion was the same as you just heard. The second round effectively couldn't change anything, unless Shevchian would have made some severe mistakes, but he didn't, and the last person to make it to the top 8 stage is Gocha. This stage was a mixed bag. The first heat between Roman Tividor and Kirill Metskevich was relatively uneventful. Roman was slightly more precise in the lead, 28 versus 24 points, and a bit closer in the chase. Which earned him the win. The battle between Timofey Dobrovolsky and Anton Kozlov once again was not without incident. In the same bend where Gocha slipped up previously, Timofey also allowed 3 wheels to go off, with Anton then colliding with him. And this incident vindicates the judging for the Shevchian-Estapov heat. The collision occurred outside of the slowdown zone, also the pace was off. As a result, fault for the incident was assigned to Dobrovolsky. Also, Kozlov couldn't continue, and so the race director ruled that Anton is the winner of this battle, with him becoming the second semifinalist. The heat between Artyom Shabanov and Sergei Sak didn't confuse the judges in the slightest. Artyom earned the full 30 points for line, while Sergei Z was somewhere way behind. Artyom stuck closer to Sergei, who made quite a few mistakes, earning 21 points for line. We now know the third semifinalist, and it is Shabanov. The battle between Yevgeny Losiev and Georgy Chivchyan was eagerly anticipated, but nobody expected this to happen. Losiev was super close, then they hit the TG3 bend that caused forward so much trouble. Gocha corrects, shedding a bit of speed to avoid going out of bounds again, but Losiev was just too close. 2 taps, and that's a wrap. This time, to keep the tires from getting cold, both drivers were immediately allowed to go for round 2, where neither of them even seemed to be trying. Losiev allowed one wheel off, also he missed touch-and-go 7, while Chivchyan was pursuing him at a moderate distance. Only when it was over did the judges offer their insight. We were awaiting this battle, and after having watched it, unfortunately, it could have gone better. Let's discuss the incident that occurred. During the run where Georgy Chivchyan was in the lead, after he went past touch-and-go 3.2 and began to move towards touch-and-go 3.3, his car was on a trajectory towards the inner part of the track. And in order to hit touch-and-go 3.3, Georgy Chivchyan was forced to slightly let off the gas and also briefly touch the handbrake. We just had a look at the replay numerous times from multiple camera angles, slow-mo, dynamics, and so on. And indeed, in that area for a brief moment, Gocha's tires weren't smoking. Yevgeny Losiev, in the meantime, was sticking super close, as he should have been for that portion in the chase position. There was still a bit of a gap coming up to the D-cell, and we're all in agreement that Georgy Chivchyan is at fault for the collision. Yevgeny Losiev makes it to the next stage. Makes all the sense in the world if you bear in mind what happened before. Forward's cars seemed to be having trouble navigating this part of the track, and Georgy was quite upset after the event. The rules were followed, that's true, but he felt as if they didn't take the weather into account. It was at that moment a blizzard unloaded onto the track, making it wet, which affected the car's behavior in terms of speed. Here's what Yevgeny had to say about this battle. I mean, the cars barely even touched each other, but the car still spun out. I spoke with him, he said the wheel was hit. My guess is that his tire was just slippery, and that's why he thought the road was slippery. I didn't feel that way at all. So I spoke with him, he said it started snowing when we were out, and that is true, I even turned my wipers on. But then up until a point, things were going fine. Now that everybody has been heard, let's cover the top 4. From here on, there were no more incidents, and we finally witnessed some proper battles. The first pair to go out were Anton Kozlov and Roman Tividar. 2 very good battles these were. Line scores for leading were identical, 28 points, though Roman got some criticism for his angle and pace. Also, Anton looked slightly more confident chasing. This was enough to allow him passage to the final race. Roman, in the meantime, will be contending for 3rd place. The second battle was a confusing one. At first, Shabanov made an effort almost worthy of 100 points in the lead, while Losiev couldn't have been sticking any closer. From there, Losiev almost duplicated Shabanov's lead run, while Artyom demonstrated that Yevgeny could have done better, sticking even closer to his opponent. It would appear as if Artyom is at a slight advantage, but only Mikhail Davidians would have agreed with that assessment. Stas Dolgich and Vladimir Safonov decided that they should go at it again. We'll provide the commentary from all sides a bit later. For now, let's just enjoy them going at it one more time. And this time Shabanov made a mistake, missing touch-and-go 7. Losiev's performance was the same as before, They changed positions. Yevgeny made a slight mistake, not in his line, but he was obviously correcting. Artyom was pretty much in Yevgeny's driver's seat. He couldn't have been any closer. It would seem as if this were a win for Losiev or an OMT, however... Now is the time to listen to what everybody has to say. First, the judges. I have the microphone because the only person who ruled for an OMT was me. Wait, I meant to say in favor of Shabanov. My two colleagues, meanwhile, ruled for one more time. Both contenders did a fantastic job in the lead. There's really nothing to even criticize them for. Not even anything minor. In terms of line, they were bang on, their transitions were good. It was all terrific. But now let's discuss how each of them did in the chase. Starting with Yevgeny Losiev. Not to say there was a delay, but his inputs weren't overly dramatic when they were initiating. From there, he allowed one wheel to skim the perimeter of the track, which is to say it was on the curb while he was chasing. From there, overall, things were going pretty well, but there is one thing I want to focus on, which is the transition. I mean to say not the transition, but touch and go too. In this spot, Gene was slightly further behind, and then at inner touch and go 4, in that area, Gene was also slightly further behind. Okay, and now let's discuss how Artyom Shabanov did with the chasing. Initiated at too wide of an angle. Yes, there was a bit of correction, but the initiation was totally in step. Everything was perfect, except for that minor flaw. From there, between 1 and 2, he was super close. Also, the transition going towards 3, just like Yevgeny previously. In the main bend where you have 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, Artyom was also ever so slightly closer. Then at the inside, Artyom Shabanov was totally in lockstep with Yevgeny Losiev, while Yevgeny was making some slight corrections to his angle in that area when he was chasing. So Artyom did better in this spot as well. The final transition more or less identical. Yevgeny did a slightly better job with it, while in the end at number 8, Artyom did slightly better in my opinion. And so I see it as a victory for Artyom Shabanov. My colleagues maintain that when it comes to the nuances, everything was just spectacular, and yes, that is true, but I was able to find something that would have given Artyom the upper hand. Allow me to explain why I decided in favor of an OMT. During both rounds, they were indeed sticking super close to each other, but both of them made at least one mistake during a transition. So one of them would do a better job with a certain transition, then the other would do better with a different transition. I actually wanted to give the win for that last round to Artyom Shabanov. But one thing that really bothered me was his initiation. While chasing, I mean, he initiated well, he just didn't quite make the most of it. Why I began with this round? Well, just now he convinced me 100%. Initiating at the same angle, however, this time he was on throttle when he should have been, and did everything he could to continue moving with no correction, to narrow the gap and carry that momentum all the way to the finish. Also, Yevgeny Losiev, while he was in the lead, he slightly corrected in that spot. As for the round when Yevgeny Losiev was in the chase position, you can't really see it on the broadcast, it seemed as if they were close, but seeing everything in real life, it was obvious that the gap between the two cars, it was over a car's width. In some spots, it was even 2 cars' widths. Yevgeny was unable to catch up with Artyom in the first 2 sectors. He was able to put on a bit of pressure by the end of the second one, but then in Sector 4, Artyom Shabanov did make a mistake. He blew past the deceleration and then the acceleration zone, missing the inside touch and go. I don't think that really created any issues for Yevgeny Losiev. He could have caught up, but he was unable to, unfortunately. There was some distance between them. Once again, Artyom did a phenomenal job with the chasing. His performance was excellent, and so that's why we had him winning. I'm going to be very concise. As for what sealed the deal for me, so the final transition where Artyom missed the inside touch and go, number 7, yes, we did notice that, and we realized that he was carrying a bit too much speed, which resulted in a gap forming between his car and Yevgeny Losiev's car. And so for this sector, let's forget about the fact that going through it, Yevgeny was slightly further behind. One thing we need to bear in mind is that when going from the inside touch and go 1 towards number 2, Yevgeny took some pretty significant corrective action, which I was severely penalizing during qualifying for, removing at least 2.5 points for line. Missing number 7, that's -4 points. But let's not forget about one critical factor. If we remember last year's season, a driver who in the chase was going all out and taking some serious risks would have been able to make up for missing certain touch-and-goes. And I think this is a terrific example for us to be able to show that Artyom was able to make up for this single touch-and-go by means of taking the risk, closely chasing, and so on. I also need to mention that Yevgeny Losiev during initiation, and you can clearly see this from the higher camera angle, which was shown to you during the broadcast, by the way. Anyway, Yevgeny slightly botched the initiation, and for the first maybe 10 meters, he was quite far behind his opponent. Meanwhile, Artyom, just like the first time around, but this time with no correction, initiated at too wide of an angle, but from there his performance was simply brilliant all the way to the finish. And so that's why my opinion is that both the first time and the second time Artyom Shabanov won. Now let's hear the drivers out. So we went at it with Artyom Shabanov one more time, and I happened to be on tires that had no grip, like zero, operating at a deficit this time. But I enjoyed that battle. I'm satisfied with my performance as the leader, couldn't quite make it work in the chase. Made a few errors here and there, but overall that was a proper battle. I slightly messed up a transition, there were some other mistakes, but these things happen. But no big deal. A serious young warrior on his path. I see it as a positive. I think that was the best performance of my entire life. The first round went brilliantly. I was being slightly cautious, watching how Yevgeny was moving, and his driving is quite different compared to last year. He's much cleaner and much more open now. Like, yeah, I think he found the right balance. And after the first battle, we were told to go out one more time, and that's when I realized that for this round I can be sticking super close. I felt that I can do it, and in the end, yeah, I think this is my best performance in the chase in my entire life. What else is there to even say? The battle for third place was also a very difficult one, not just for the drivers, but for the judges as well. Yevgeny Losiev, after his battle with Shabanov, must have decided that he should chase even closer, which he did, but unlike during the semifinals, he and his opponent made contact. Roman Tivadar ate it up, and even racked up 28 line points, minus one wheel going off during initiation before touch-and-go 1 even. They changed places. Tivadar was on some serious risk, sticking close except for one instance. Losiev in the meantime earned 30 line points, but his pace and angle were not ideal. This could have been an OMT, however... Let's dissect this one. There was quite obviously contact during the first run, but let's not forget that the judges judge based off of facts. If Roman had spun out, this might have been a different outcome, as the graphs don't point to any mistakes being made by the leader in that spot. But Tivadar did not spin to win. He kept going. Moreover, this didn't even affect his pace or his line. None of his wheels even went off. And so this would be considered a minor mishap that wouldn't lead to any serious penalization. Losiev was close the entire way. His performance in the chase could be considered good. Round 2, and the key component is the touch-and-go 3-bend, as well as Yevgeny's angle work. After the transition, his angle was wider than allowed, and remained that way until the mid-portion between touch-and-go 3.1 and 3.2. From there he corrected his angle, though it didn't become narrow. His speed and line remained consistent, which is a crucial factor. No minor anchoring in that area. Also, wider angles were not outright forbidden as long as drivers maintained the correct line and pace. If this were qualifying, Losiev would have lost anywhere from half a point to 1.5 at most. Tivadar wasn't knocking on his door in that spot, meaning him correcting and falling behind was not 100% caused by the leader's actions. After the event, Roman mentioned that his actions were in part caused by how the Supra was moving. However, in that particular area and at a serious clip, His car was constantly understeering during the entire course of the event, which is something he couldn't rectify. And you can't not go at a good clip when you're up against Losev, and this time it slipped once again. And overall there were other ways to work through the situation. It's all in the circumstances, and so no contention on his part. Here's what Yevgeny had to say on the matter. When I was out with him, it so happened I was on some good tires and I was feeling great. I knew that I was gonna get a good run in. You could say the final battle was an easy one, but really only for the judges. As for the competition aspect, the heat was on. Artyom Shabanov once again put in an almost 100-point performance. Anton Kozlov was pressuring him, then fell behind, then more pressure. Both drivers did a good job. The second round decided the fate of this heat. Anton made a mistake, leaving the track at one point, while Artyom once again proved that even when you think that he can't chase any closer, he keeps upping the ante. How he's able to do that is just wow. Every single time. Naturally, it was Shabanov who ultimately won this event, decisively, which is something most likely nobody's going to argue with. Well, this was a hectic event. The drivers and the race organizers were probably hoping for slightly better weather, the judges for fewer riddles that they'd have to decode, and it would have been quite nice if this video turned out to be a relatively quick overview of the race. But unfortunately, that was just not to be. Still, one hell of a way to kick off the season. Hopefully this video helped out whoever wanted to wrap their heads around the complexity of the judging and the nuances of this event. But that's it for this video. Once the English version is out, an RDS Open event would have taken place in Ryazan on the 3rd and 4th of May, and on May 24th-25th, the Premier Series will visit St. Petersburg for Stage 2. Watch the broadcast on RDS TV, get tickets to the event on vdrift.ru, and now a word from our finalists. Bye-bye! A long-awaited season, after once again spending the winter preparing for the summer drifting season. Overall, we're doing well. Our cars are fast and reliable, just like last year. We were considering repainting my car, doing some other mods, but I'm actually fully satisfied with my car after last season. And so I told the boys to leave it alone. There is nothing wrong with it. It didn't sustain any serious damage throughout the season, no severe crashes, so it was totally fine to compete this season as well. Last year I didn't do very well during the first MRW event, and this year I came here with that on my mind. I did a few tweaks to my car, and as a result it drives better, it's more consistent, which was confirmed during practice and during qualifying. My performance was proper, though during the top 16 stage I didn't do too well against Kirill Mickiewicz. Honestly, I'm just happy to be here. I missed this place. I missed summer drifting competitions, so I'm happy. Yes, it is chilly, but at least I was able to drive in dry weather conditions, which is always nice. Yes, it was slippery at times, qualifying was getting a bit challenging, but we did well. Our team, and that makes me very happy. Overall, the car is reliable like an AK-47. It's in good working condition, the handling is perfect. The car allows me to drive consistently well, despite the difficult road conditions and the cold pavement. As a matter of fact, the Moscow Raceway is one of the most difficult tracks in this configuration. Because of the profile of the bends, they were not made for drifting, but we managed to drift somehow. But yeah, my car is perfectly balanced. We will make a few adjustments, but that's gonna be for the next event. Yeah, things are going great for us. The mood is very positive. Honestly, my attitude towards the entire process has changed. I was thinking, what'll I do when I get old? And I'd like to fondly remember the years of my youth. I wouldn't want to remember how I suffered, so I'm just gonna try and enjoy everything I go through. We properly prepared the car for this event, and we're finally able to get the tuning right. And so that's what it is. We actually rebuilt the entire car over the course of the winter. Obviously, we replaced the engine, now it's got a 2J. I reached out to Denis Ponomarev, and he built and tuned a great engine for me, which has been performing very well for 2 events now. Also, we fully revamped the rear suspension and found a good setup for the front suspension. Also, we did a bunch of weight reduction, down to the lowest value allowed by the rules. For me, it's as if the season never ended. We were racing throughout the entire winter, getting ready, so that was all good. The car, as usual, while at the MRW, loves to, let's just say, keep me in this sort of state, but I wasn't quite as nervous. I was confident that things would be okay. The team did its work. By the start of the tandem drifting, they got everything fixed. And yeah, it was brilliant. I do have a decent enough understanding of how to drive there. Last year's season finale was held at the Agora racetrack. With the classic configuration, I remember very well what to do. And even the inverted layout I still remember pretty well. I was very consistent on it as well, so I could do either of them. Since in the final race I couldn't keep up with Artyom, I'm gonna have to work on my car a bit. The top priority, of course, is to fix anything that's broken, everything that was smashed, and we're gonna have to work on pace, in order not to fall behind during such important battles. The fact that Stage 2 is going to be held at Agora Drive, it's pretty much my home racetrack at this point, which is quite nice and convenient. This gives me that extra bit of confidence, and buys us a bit of time since there's no need to tend to logistics. So we're gonna get to work on the car, do some thorough testing, and get things done. I enjoy drifting wherever. We have the best selection of racetracks in the world. I love it. Always something new. I think I saw that it's going to be the layout with the big acceleration section from the other side, so that's very cool. Last year I made it to the final race, and hopefully this year we achieve the same success. First place among teams. I mean, I fully appreciate the better each individual member of the team does, the more points the team is going to get. But today we did very well, and we're going to keep on hammering. As for what the ultimate goal is, well, isn't that obvious? Become the champion, of course. That's a no-brainer. Everybody is looking to win. Otherwise, why even participate? But yeah, we'll prepare for the event, keep all of the nuances in mind, plan, strategize, because a plan without strategy is a path to failure. But we know exactly where we're headed.